Cantina Cast Patreon content.
Hello, Patreon folk.
Hello, Patreon members.
Hello. How are y'all doing?
Hello, Albert.
Hello, Jonesy. How was your evening? How was your weekend?
It was all right. Got to catch up with a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a long time, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
How about you?
It's good. I went camping, and I'm suffering now because it was like 22 degrees on Friday night, and I had allergies really bad, and I had smoke inhalation because I was constantly making fires, but it was a pretty incredible time, so I really did enjoy the time.
Yeah, the funny part about that is that, you know, it's going to in the 20s here in Texas or in Central Texas, and it will be in the 80s later this week.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly
welcome
right.
to winter in Texas.
Yep. So I'm
It's a
nursing
mess.
a cold again, so I apologize if I cough on the mic or I go on mute and forget to come off mute because that seems to happen sometimes. But yeah, let's thank you guys for joining this Patreon, this live recording of the Patreon episode that we're doing tonight on Commander Cody, which we're calling Cody's Conflict. So I'm glad we landed the title there. There were several up for a grab, but I like that one. I like what you do with the artwork too, by the way. It's really good.
Thank you.
Before we do that though, we got show and tell. I've got show and tell. Jonesy apparently is like above this now. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, no, because tell people what exactly, like what I did for you this weekend.
So over the weekend, Jonesy, I asked him, so somebody was selling some World of Warcraft collector edition box sets. It was a really good steal, good price, good quality. And so I sent him the money, and then he went and met. You basically risked your life by meeting this complete and total stranger on the side of I-35 there to pick up my merchandise. So thank you for doing that. I know that wasn't really what you had in mind, but I do appreciate the effort.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. And I brought it home. He's like, hey, can you take a few pictures of it? So I took each one of them out. Like, so there, what was it, like 5 box sets, something like that,
Yeah,
5 or 6 box sets. And there's all sorts of stuff in these. There's a DVD for behind the scenes. There's the actual, you know, gameplay discs. You have a big art of book. There's collectors. There's trading cards. There's all sorts of stuff in these things. And so I took them out and kind of set them up so you had a nice presentation of all of it, and did that for each individual one.
I know.
So
and then, oddly
enough,
enough, the exact same photos showed up on eBay for sale. So I have my doubts as to whether or not you actually will go through with giving me those. I have a feeling you've already put them up for sale. So
yeah, I will. Well, I'd say this though, man. I'd rather keep them and put them up for sale because you got a pretty amazing steal on these, and they're in awesome shape. And a lot of them are still shrink wrapped. Like some of the art of books are still in the wrappers. All of the trading cards. I think only one of them didn't have trading cards, but you knew some were not as complete as others, but most of them were pretty well complete. But man, a lot of stuff was still in the package.
Sweet.
So it was really neat.
Well, on top of that, my merch doesn't stop. I'll share a couple things. I did pick this up during the holiday break.
I like that mug a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's got a couple different characters and it's artwork. I mean, the artwork's not exceptional, but for like $5, I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. I don't know why. Oh, I know why. It was like it had a spring tag, and so they were getting rid of all their spring collection. But that was the only one they had, so that was kind of cool. Now, Jonesy, you know I don't collect pins. However, someone at some point, someone needs to compile all the times I've said, you know, I'm not a pin collector. Right. But I couldn't pass this one up. So this is I don't know if you can see that as I focus there.
Yeah.
A neon edition Dungeons and Dragons 20-sided die pin. I don't know what I'll do with this, but it was like cool basement motif, right? This little 80s retro thing. So
that looks cool. I like that. It's like kind of the hot pink kind of neon color there.
Yeah, and I wonder what it looks like in a black light, actually. I hadn't thought about that. I'll need to turn that on and take a picture.
Anything to turn the black light on these days, huh?
Yeah. Yep. And then the last thing, because I'll cut it short. I brought like 8 million things. I thought Jonesy was coming with a bunch of stuff. So this one's kind of big. And I've not even touched this yet. But another item that I picked up.
Oh, yes.
I can't even see my monitor now. Do I have this in camera?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the land speeder that came out for Lego Star Wars. No longer being made, but I found this I think I got it for like $200. which is a steal because it goes for much more than that these days. Because it's, once these things go out of print or out of manufacturing, they become very expensive to find. But I locked that one in for like $200.
Is that an actual like UCS, like Ultimate Collector, or is it just in the black box? Because it's a
yeah, it's an Ultimate Collector series. It's got the UCS thing up here, if you can see that.
Oh, okay. Yep. Very nice.
So it comes with a little plate and all that. This one I had to get though, because I think, at least to the best of my knowledge, the very first Star Wars toy I ever got was the land speeder, from like the original land speeder that was released. It had the wheels and it would pop up and all that. So to have this again without that one, it's this, and this will probably sit in a box, by the way. So
Mike had a special message for you there. Grow up,
thanks,
kids.
Mike. Grow up, kids. Yeah. All right. Let's see your collection, sir. I wonder how many arcade systems you have. How many uprights you have, mister?
So it's funny. I actually messaged him on Friday. I was off on Friday. And I was like, hey, man, let's play some NBA Jam, because I've got the NBA Jam arcade one up. He has it too. And he's like, well, he had every excuse under the sun not to go and play basketball with me
Mike,
online. And so he actually went down to the basement where all of his arcade machines are at. And he has a plenty. He has a plethora. Yeah. And he took a picture of the condition it was in, of why he couldn't play. So he went through all the effort to go down there and show me why he couldn't play. And in my head, I'm like, Mike, there's a solution. You take your arm and you clear all the crap off. Like, problem solved. Just onto the floor. Doesn't matter. Can you stand? Can you play? Did you die? No. Play.
No, exactly. Stop making excuses. He's probably reeling after the loss today from the Dolphins. So
that is true. Well, if there's anything, is Dolphins fans have a lot of practice at disappointment, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, and disappointment. Yeah. Well, both really. Let's be real. All right. So that's what I had for show and tell. Again, if I ever put that thing together, maybe I'll show it. Oh, you know what? Just quickly, I did start the Boba Fett one. I showed that probably a year ago now. It's been forever. I did start it. I've got 2 bags left, and so once that's done, I'll find some space up here behind me on the
I've always got stuff around me though. Here, I've got something right here.
Okay.
It is we got this from the Star Wars stuff, guys. Back.
The celebration or last?
I can't remember. I think it may have been the 2019 celebration. Does that sound right? I don't know. Anyway, it's a challenge coin. And so for those not familiar.
Oh, I think that was this year. I think that was this one.
It may have been, yeah.
Yeah, they go all out on their merch.
They do, man. This is really cool. I actually looked this up. I was like, man, we got to do something like this.
Yeah.
And it's like a solid coin too. I mean, it is about the size of a US $50.
Right.
About the same weight and everything else, but it was really cool. And they got it through a veteran managed business called Lone Star Challenge Coins, which I presume is probably down there in the San Antonio area, because that's where they're at. But anyway, it was so cool, and I had it near my desk. It was just one of those, hey, in case of emergency, break this. Oh yeah, Celebration 2022 says right there on the coin. Oh wow, they even commemorate it that way.
See,
how cool is that? So Vader's on one side, they got Luke on the other side. Pretty neat stuff, though. But it's just kind of one of those cool things to have. And for people who know what challenge coins are, they're pretty neat.
Yep. And shout out to those guys. They're great guys. And they support our show, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah, they're really cool. They're really, really cool.
All right. And as a reminder, again, this is the Patreon show. So thank you, Patreons, especially
our now part of the tribe members, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Rist, Justin, Jackson, Sharpman, Dan, Daz, and Isabella. And of course, our Delusions of Grandeur tier, Rod, Kathy, Hard Countered. And if you are listening to this, we do a live stream, and we have a few people in the live stream with us already tonight, including the former Dark Lord of podcasting in retirement, Mike Rondo, but also Music Train, Jonathan, Sky, Lauren, Steph. Thank you all for coming out so far. For those in the background, we see you and acknowledge you as well. So thanks for coming out and joining us for a Sunday evening testimonial about Commander Cody.
Commander Cody, yeah. All right, well, let's do this. So let's talk about, so I thought what we could do is first talk about just kind of opening thoughts on Commander Cody, because I have a question. I'm going to pose this question.
I have a question. Why the hell do people care about Commander Cody?
Okay, so this is, you stole my question. Because okay.
I just ripped the Band-Aid off.
I like Commander Cody. And I know the only reason Mike's here is because he loves Commander Cody. There are a lot of people that do, but and don't get me wrong, I love him, and we made a whole show about him. I'm gonna love talking about him, and I can't wait to see
Right.
where his story goes. But I do like pragmatically, realistically, when I look at how much screen time he has, and I was trying to do this, I was actually watching all the Clone Wars episodes and trying to tally up how many minutes he's on screen relative to the entire series, and it's a very, very, very small amount. Now,
Right.
granted, it still adds up to like I'm thinking somewhere in the 25 to 30-minute range, so pretty good presence. But remember, that's
Over the course of
years
7
and
seasons.
yeah, exactly. Of content. You know, you look at the Clone Wars animated movie, he's in that. He's got some screen time there. And then with the movie itself, with Revenge of the Sith, he's only got like 2 minutes actually. 2 minutes of total screen time in that movie. And you know, of course, the movie came out first, right? And then the Clone Wars came out. And so that kind of gave us a way to really understand who this character was and love him more. But if you think about it, if you're watching Revenge of the Sith for the very first time, you're like, he looks cool. He's orange, but we had no history. We knew nothing about his relationship with the 212th or Obi-Wan Kenobi or his relationship with Rex. None of that was there, right? So I guess the question that I'm asking is like, why do we love him so much? Is it the helmet? Is it his relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is it some combination thereof? But I can't explain it. I love him. I love him.
It seems like it's probably some combination there. I think he is very unique, especially when they came out. We knew the clones had different colors, and we saw the merchandise coming out after the Attack of the Clone movies, and they were really going hog wild with that. But then you have this other character, this Cody, this guy that's orange, and he has a very unique helmet. He's got antennas coming out of the side of his shoulder pads and whatever else, and so he just looks cool.
Right.
And they put a lot of marketing into this character. I mean, they did the giant cardboard cutout of his character. I remember I went to a sci-fi expo up in Plano, up near the Dallas area, and they had a giant cutout of him during the Revenge of the Sith days.
So he was like the Rick Ole of Revenge of the Sith.
Kind of, but way better, I think. I mean, because it was
Do you remember how we got duped with how amazing Rick Ole was going to be in episode 1, Phantom Menace?
Yeah, it was like Rick McCollum kept talking him up or something like that.
What a letdown. Sorry, please.
Yeah, but I mean, similar thing though. It's just he's this really unique clone. We knew clones were selling anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I think this is just one of those marketing things that we've never really had anything with Cody to really care a whole lot. We know that him and Rex have partnered up and done some things over time. Of course, we know he was with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, and Kenobi relied on Cody quite a bit. They seem to have had a really positive relationship until, Cody decided to turn tail on him and shoot him.
We all have our moments of weakness, but yeah,
right. So, but I mean, yeah, I guess that's probably where it's all from, But it's interesting that the design of the character really didn't change even in the Bad Batch, and that the armor is still pretty close to what he had in Revenge of the Sith. I mean, of course, a different color.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting that they kept that uniqueness to him, which I thought was actually kind of a nice touch to be able to do that. But other than that, doesn't seem to be anything totally unique about him, even in the Clone Wars. Like you said, if you total up 22, 25 minutes, that really comes out to like one full episode in comparison with the, I don't know how many episodes we got.
I didn't do the math, but yeah, I meant to get around to doing the actual math of all.
Usually you've got 22 to 24 episodes in a season. I think they had 5 or 6 complete seasons. So, I mean, let's just call it 100 plus episodes, basically one full one of Cody in 100. So you're talking, less than 1%.
Yeah.
So it's
and these aren't even like
incredible.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not like Cody centric episodes, right? It's just like little bits and pieces. Yeah. He's there. He says a couple lines. He partners up with someone. He's usually taking orders from Obi-Wan Kenobi in every one of those. I mean, there's a couple of where him and Rex are together and they're kind of calling the shots.
I think when we did the Rex episodes a while back, that was the question of like, why Rex and not Cody?
Yeah. No, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really interesting because Cody, again, had all the marketing buzz around him. It was really unique. He saddled up with Obi-Wan. Seemed like the really natural fit to be that front and center clone character, but instead, they went the Rex route.
Yeah. Now Clone Wars, so to be fair, Clone Wars did a really good job of making us like him more than just the aesthetic of it all, which I think really is what it comes down to, right? Yeah. Revenge of the Sith comes out for all the same reasons you already said. Everybody was just kind of gravitating to this really cool looking clone design wise. And then we get that fleshed out a lot more, even in 25 minutes. There are some pretty good moments there between him and particularly Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? And I think one of the things that probably helps us to be enamored by somebody like Cody is that I love the way Filoni and Lucas did the mirroring of their commanders, right, of their generals. You've got Rex, who is just like a byproduct of Anakin's brash, shoot first, going, kind of ways. And then you've got Commander Cody, at least in both, I would say in both Legends and canon. He's more the thinking man, right? More calculated in terms of how he goes about those things. He's also more of a diplomat, which we saw in the Bad Batch, and we'll talk about that here a little bit later. Right? He's more into diplomacy, and those are strengths that I think we generally associate with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So to see both of those characters front and center, leading their troops in very different ways, but then acknowledging that those ways are just kind of trickling down from their generals that they follow. So
Right. But it's also interesting that Cody was the one that had the experience with the Bad Batch before, Clone Force 99, back
yeah,
in the actual Clone Wars themselves, right?
right, because he was updating Rex on that old deal.
Yeah, so it's just really curious that you have a character who's kind of a bit of by the book.
By
I
the
think.
book, yeah.
Yeah, we could probably lump Cody in that bucket. I think fairly, at least from what we've seen, and for him to be able to pair up with Clone Force 99 is always a really interesting experience because it you can imagine it stretches him considerably.
Right. Well, I think it also again, this is purely speculative, but I think there's something to be said about if you're a by the book person, you usually don't try to associate yourself with people that are kind of mavericks, pushing the envelope, doing things that are unorthodox. And yet you've got that in the Bad Batch. But the difference is, and you usually don't associate yourself with those groups of people because mistakes happen. Things don't always go the way they're supposed to. Missions can fail, et cetera. The unpredictability of it all makes you feel like, okay, that's unstable. But because the Bad Batch had, quote, this perfect record, right? That's how we're introduced. Every mission they've ever gone on has been successful. For somebody like Cody, that's, even though he is a by the book person, to have something like that is just so not in his wheelhouse, but know that they deliver in results. I think that's probably where, he felt like, okay, that's I don't know how I would kind of describe that, but I can see him getting on board with somebody like that or a group like that.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that he and Rex are regs effectively, right? I mean, they're still part of the broader clone army, and for right or wrong, and that's not a slight on that to them at all. It was just the reality. Right now, they've become exceptional characters over time, of course, to us. But to see that again, like you were saying, when you're in that environment with a group of people that make you really uncomfortable, like it's really difficult to work in that environment. And we saw that with Rex, right? Rex really struggled to change his way of thinking and be more open and be more flexible and take more chances and see how it works, because you have a completely different set of skills than what you're used to having. So but I think at the end of the day, we always have to keep in mind that Cody and Rex, they're usually working within the confines that are pretty well defined for them, and for them, they're working usually they're on the extreme side of that, or they're on the outside of that from a normal squad based type of thing, even though they're still largely kind of following the rules. Mm-hmm. Their creativity is within the context of the clone, the Grand Army of the Republic, not in the context of like a Clone Force 99.
Yes, that's exactly right. No, I get what you're saying there. So I guess let's maybe kind of move into, and we don't need to spend a whole lot of time here because I want to talk about Cody as he was in Legends versus as he was in, well, we know how he is in canon, which we're going to get into, but I guess the way I would summarize him, and to be fair, like before we came on air, we both had acknowledged that my experience with Cody in Legends is really limited. Like I was really struggling just to remember, like, where the heck was he? Like,
yeah,
because we got stories. I mean, he's got a whole lot of stuff in there, and you pointed out a lot of it came from the comics. And so
there was an actual Clone Wars comic series, for a while.
Yeah, and I honestly did not. I really wasn't into clones. Again, I think I've said that many times at the time. So it wasn't kind of an issue or a particular comic that I was trying to pick up. So I missed a lot of the storyline. But the way I would summarize it, I think what the primary focus on Cody was the fact that he was training stormtroopers. Right, he stayed on with the Galactic Empire, training stormtroopers, trying to teach them all of the elite skills that he had learned from Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Jedi, his experiences with Rex. But it was a very different kind of environment than what we're seeing now play out in canon.
Yeah, the transition to the Empire, I don't think they didn't really have the opportunity to explore a lot of what that was before recently. You know,
Hmm.
when they had done it, it was less of the well, it was gosh, the times I've seen it done, like they were like the Republic Commando books, like they transitioned to Imperial Commando, so you got a little bit of it there,
Yeah.
and you got the rigidity of it and things like that, but you didn't necessarily have this true oppression and brutality of it. At least I don't remember that part of it. And so I think that's the part that we're seeing a bit more straightforward now and more in our face. And that's what Bad Batch is. I think why Bad Batch is important. I think from an overall Star Wars canon and understanding it, why it's important to consume this, even if you're maybe lukewarm to the series. I think that's why it's important because I think some of that's probably true with Cody still. He's probably training that next generation, both the clones, but also maybe doing like what Crosshair's doing and bringing up some of the conscripted soldiers, up to speed as well and transitioning some of that. But you get a different component of that with what he is seeing, and it's not what he came from. This wasn't what they fought for and what they, his brothers were dying for. And so it
Hmm.
is interesting seeing that just evolution of that of the story in general from what we had before. Because with Order 66, it was a bit it just wasn't explored, unfortunately, in Legends, I think, at least as far as I remember. And now we're really getting good bite-sized chunks out of what that transition looked like and how each individual clone, at least in the more recognizable ones for right now, but even some other new ones, how they've transitioned and what that actually means for them. What do they see? How does it make them feel? And then how does the whole chip and everything else work into that?
So the Clone Wars, and this is no secret, but seeing the Clone Wars series really changed our viewpoint on all of the clones. Right?
Right.
We learned so much more about them, and really they became very humanized. Because if just on the movies alone, you don't get that at all. You get the fact that they're clones and they're being
Yeah,
sent out to die and fight a war. That's
yeah,
it.
they're just soldiers, right? I mean,
Yes.
basically just foot soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Clone Wars, of course, and it was probably one of the primary missions or goals of that series was to humanize them, right? To really kind of do that juxtaposition of the clones versus, or I guess humans versus robots or androids, right?
Right.
And through that, we get all kinds of great stories, starting with the very first one, that whole Yoda and talking about the clones and how unique they were and all of that, right? So that was kind of a common theme. But for Cody specifically, that one cuts deeper now because in the movie, right, in Revenge of the Sith, and his line is at the very, like right before he shoots Obi-Wan. This is like seconds before Order 66. He tells Obi-Wan Kenobi, "Come on, when have I ever let you down?" Right, and Kenobi kind of laughs like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I shouldn't be thinking." And so that's our first, like, again, they're pulling back a little bit on kind of giving us a preview of that. Okay, there's a history here. Apparently, they've worked together. We didn't see any of this stuff because Clone Wars hadn't come out yet,
Right.
but they definitely had a good working relationship. And then, like, I don't know, 15 seconds later, he takes the order. And he doesn't even think twice about it. Like, we didn't get the struggle that we had with like Rex or some of the other clones that we know remove their chips, like Gregor, Wolf, all those guys.
There was
He
no
just
context. Yeah.
he just blindly is like, okay, yeah, let's shoot him down. And he gives that little 2-pointed. I love that little wave thing that he does. That little
Right.
right up there, boy. Shoot that guy down. Don't know who he is anymore.
He didn't let him down. He helped him down.
He helped him down. And I think at times maybe, and Mike's already left because he's old and tired, but I think Mike and so at one point in some of the older episodes, they kind of really were talking about this, and I don't know where they landed anymore, but there was some thoughts. There's always been thoughts, again, prior to the Clone Wars and even after that, really, about, did Cody really try to shoot him down? Right? Was he trying to kill him? Was he struggling? And so he just kind of, I didn't really shoot him. I shot the rocks. And if he lives, then great. If not, then I did my mission, kind of thing. I think it was kind of open to speculation. I think for me particularly, I think he was just following orders and just did it. But it's very hard to, I don't know. I struggle with that now, given what we know about Cody,
I think
especially
he,
after this last episode of the Bad Batch. Sorry.
yeah, no, I think he made an honest effort to take him out. I don't think there was anything holding him back because he, like you said, he just didn't hesitate. He got the order, made the point. They shot
Hmm.
it. The shot was accurate. It was right. I mean, he was a moving target and he was moving quickly on I forgot what the lizard like thing was, but so I mean, they made a good effort and then they were out there looking for him. They intended to finish the job. And so I think over time, though, over the last year plus now that's gone by, clearly something has changed though with Cody. Whether it's like you've speculated a bunch of times, whether it's just the chip's effectiveness is wearing off. I don't think he's probably had it removed. It'd be interesting if he did, but we don't see any visible scarring. And again, in the Empire, it seems like it'd be very difficult to have that done. Although it's interesting, like how did Crosshair have his removed? But I guess we will eventually find that. Or did he? Too. I think he did. Well, maybe he had it burned out we had it taken out, but maybe it was anyway. This isn't Crosshair, but that's a whole thing. We still got to get more clarity around.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, I wonder if they'll even give it to us. But I think with Cody, I think he took his fair shot. He intended to do it, but yeah, clearly something's changed. And I like the idea that the chips are losing effectiveness. Right? They were designed to go on for so long after the order, and then the plan was that the clones would be decommissioned, or they'd be put down, whatever it would be, within some amount of time. But they've not been able to transition to that because this order, this the bill that keeps trying to go through that they had talked about in this last episode, and I'm sorry it's escaping me, but the defense bill, whatever, where they'll conscript soldiers instead of continue the clone army, has just taken longer to get effect. So this is the side effect of that, is that now we're beyond end of life for the chips, and we're starting to see them malfunction or just be less effective, or they just start to turn off. Maybe the internal battery dies. I don't know, but
yeah, they got to get them on a charger. I was just thinking this is completely related, but not related. But when you were talking, I thought, Nala Se is locked up right now, and they're doing God knows what with her. I think it has something to do with cloning.
Oh,
but I just wonder if at some point they go to her and say, why wouldn't they? That, to me, I would be asking her, like, what's going on with these chips, and how do we stop them? Or is there a way to kind of just pull the plug and decommission them and all that? But I just wonder if
it seems like you'd take a meeting with her, right? I mean, she's clearly doing busy work or doing lots of busy stuff, trying to clone the Emperor or whatever it is, getting genetic material to for whatever. But it would be like, you know what, Alice, I need half an hour of your time, please, because y'all's design is proving a little faulty,
right?
So. Right, and you're the only Kaminoan that's left in the galaxy.
That's live, so this is all on you. Sorry.
Right, congratulations. You're the only one that knows
to inform you. Okay, so the other part of it, I guess, is in answering the question of who is and who was Commander Cody. His relationship with Obi-Wan. We've talked about that. Again, a lot of it we just kind of have to take at face value. Don't get me wrong. There were plenty of episodes in the Clone Wars where he was following Obi-Wan Kenobi, right on his hip in many of those episodes, right? So he did some really cool stuff. There was one scene, and I forget which episode it was, but he and so it was Commander Cody and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they were kind of pinned down, and they were trying to back into a ship to get out to escape. And there's a moment there where Cody yells at Obi-Wan Kenobi something about the canisters or whatever it is. And so instinctively, Obi-Wan uses the Force, launches one of these like pressurized canisters into the air towards the troops that are shooting, and then Cody takes a shot, right? So showing that they work really well together. Like tactically, they had some really cool stuff in very creative ways that they work together, and of course they get away. So there was great examples of where they did work well together. We know he had that relationship with Rex, a very close relationship with Rex.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, and I think it stems from the Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker relationship, because they were usually paired up together and on all kinds and sorts of missions. But when you talk about two people that really had a very strong bond, and where I want to go with this, and then I don't know if this is really a fair question because we don't have a lot of details here, but I went back and watched some of Rebels, particularly the scenes where Rex is in there and he's kind of reminiscent about Cody, which really aren't a whole lot. And I think that was surprising to me. Now, I don't know if that's because at the time they really were unclear as to where they would take Commander Cody, and where they wanted his ultimate journey to end. But for somebody like Rex, I do find it odd that he does not really mention him much in Rebels, given their close relationship. And they may retcon this later at some point, but
not retcon, enhance.
I'm sorry.
And I think it would make sense that Rex would talk about, Wolf and Gregor in Rebels, because they're there, right? And they've gone through a lot. A lot of it was what's happened since the Empire. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think some of it, they may have been, more on the production side of things rather than, what are the characters thinking. probably had. I mean, I'm sure they at least had a discussion about Cody. What do we think a rough idea of where Cody is or how Cody is in how's he involved in this era? And where is he gone? But they didn't have to invest anything in it because they had Wolf and Gregor there.
True.
Now
that's fair. Yeah.
Again, I think with Rebels, you could question, well, why didn't they have Cody there? But that tells me that Cody's on a different arc and a different trajectory. And I think with the Bad Batch, I think that's one of the things why we would like to say that he's going to go and meet up and find Rex, or maybe he's heard rumors of Rex or something like that. But if not, if we want to keep that Rebels stuff really intact and that there is something different with it, then it lends itself more that no, Cody has a different path here since going, presumably going AWOL. I believe that's probably a true statement from Rampart. But clearly he's going about it a different way than what Rex has. So that'll be really interesting to see play out the rest of the season of Bad Batch. Even if he does meet up with Rex, does he stay, or does he have some other path that he wants to go? And maybe not the cut path, but because it doesn't seem that way. But again, this is why I'm hoping we see more of Cody this season, because I think it'd be really great to really understand what is it that he wants out of life that is completely open and ambiguous to him at this point.
Yeah. And I want to come back to some of that too a little bit later when we talk about like what's the future hold for Cody, and potentially speculatively what are we gonna see with him. And maybe we don't see anything, and then really I want to dig into like what you're talking about, those paths, because we'll save it. Okay. So let's talk about so let's move into the Bad Batch now. So we've talked about Legends, we've talked about canon, and I kind of want to focus now on the Bad Batch because it's relevant. But I think for Cody, what we saw was humanity, right? This very different from the Empire, and we saw that. I think we mentioned this on the main show here, but what really stood out to me was that we are getting a very clear indication that the Empire is trying to stay. Well, they are. They're strictly staying to calling clones by their CT or CC call signs, and not or their numbers rather than their call signs. Right, stripping them away of that humanity, putting them back into a level of just plain soldiers, like we saw, how they were displayed or how they were shown in the movies.
Right.
But for him, even though he's on these missions, and even though everybody around him is probably calling him and his troops by their clone numbers, he's still referring to all of them as their real names. He's still acknowledging them as their like human names or their live names or whatever that is. So we saw that piece of him, and then the other big piece was that that whole exchange with Governor Tawny, which we didn't really get to dissect very much. But man, I felt really bad for him now, and it really, after the second you watch it, and it's like uncomfortable knowing the outcome of that, because he's really putting himself out there. He truly believes in that negotiating because he learned that from Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was really trying to connect with this person, trying to connect on a human to human level. And I think that, we'll talk about the kind of the ramifications of exactly what happened, but that really was the turning point for him, right? What happened there at that point. But
and I think something that people lose sight of is that just because the clones had to obey Order 66 doesn't mean they became droids or became robots and were mindless creatures that just followed orders and and just marched single file, and they had no brain anymore. And that's 100% not the case. I mean, so they continue to call each other by their names rather than their numbers because again, they're brothers. They use the word brothers intentionally, right? I mean, that's a choice to use the word brother, even though you're basically genetic copies. You aren't really brothers. You're just copies of one another. If you want to get technical about it, but I mean,
sure.
So it's a very that people kind of view it that way is kind of surprising to me sometimes, because I think it's clearly that they still operate like they always have, but they have a very clear directive that they must follow because they're programmed that way, but it doesn't snap everything away and cleanse everything away.
Yeah, that order was very specific. It was about the Jedi,
Right.
And there are no Jedi anymore. So at that point, it's like, okay, I would imagine if a Jedi ever came forward, maybe it kicks in. We don't know. Maybe the effects are such that it doesn't kick in. But that order was very specific. Outside of that, yeah, I would assume they would continue to operate as they had. It wasn't that expansive in terms of what it did to the clones.
Right, and they're still human. So I mean, when he goes to negotiate with Tawny, I think it's really important that he's been fighting a war for years, you
Mhm.
know, and it just ended, and it felt like this is where we should be able to take our victory lap. We
Right.
should be able to go and settle in and help rebuild. We should. This is supposed to be the resurrection process. We're rebuilding and you know, putting the republic. I know it's the empire, but in theory, you know, you rebuild the republic bigger and better than it ever has before, stronger. The bonds are stronger. You know, and we lift each other up now. We're on the upswing. You know, we
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, killed each other for far too long. And so that he's human. While he's a soldier and doesn't know what else his life might be, that doesn't mean that they're not allowed to want something like that. Even soldiers want peace. I mean, I don't know any soldiers that I've met and had a conversation with that liked being shot at, you know, or
Right.
felt like their life was constantly at risk, or they couldn't not look over their shoulder at what was going on. So,
Yeah,
you
look
know,
at Black Chrysanthemum.
yeah, exactly. I mean, but I mean, those are the things that I think those are natural for him to do that. Now, I think what was bold about it was afterwards when he started to defy the order of the governor, or of the, you know, the governor they were trying to put into place. Right. The rest of it, I think, was actually pretty normal, that he didn't just, you know, shoot her. He was doing what needed to be done in order to progress the mission.
Mhm.
Right. Peaceful outcome is a lot better than a bloodshed outcome. And so I viewed a lot of those things as not abnormal. I didn't think they were really all that abnormal. I thought they were really, you know, ideal of a commander, of someone in his stature. You want to have that flexibility of using all the tools in your utility belt, not just your blaster or your knife.
Yeah. Yeah, and for him, that negotiating tool is pretty big.
Yeah, sure. It's a
The
skill that he's developed over time, right? And
Yeah,
he's a great mentor with
he
Obi-Wan.
did it. Like, yeah, I mean, think about it. Like,
Yeah,
I
right. It was
mean,
effective too, right?
it was very effective, right? And I know they were, for the sake of time, it was kind of pretty quick, in my opinion. But
Sure.
the point is, he knew how to connect with people, right? And that was something that he learned from somebody like Obi-Wan Kenobi, and just through his own personal experiences over the Clone Wars. And so he was still trying to exercise that. He was still trying to operate under the rules of engagement that the Republic had. For him, in his head, I think what he was thinking was the Empire is just an extension of the Republic. At the core, we're still the Republic, but yeah, now we're not at war. And so now we're out. We've got a bigger responsibility of expanding the galaxy, bringing peace and order. This is
Right.
probably what's all going through his head. And then, of course, it all comes crashing down. In terms of the rebellion, or I guess not following orders at the lower levels, probably, there's no excuses, right? Those clones probably just are expected to fall in line. But there were so many examples where both Rex, Cody, Fox, I mean, some of the other clones out there, the commanders, they did push back, right? And especially when things were, you know, let's see, not moral, I guess, in terms of the actions. If something being asked of them that was not morally right,
Things were a bit
or kind of
gray. Yeah.
be kind of gray. And the perfect example is Pong Krell,
Right.
right? I mean, how many times did Rex? I mean, yeah, Rex still fell in line, but he finally got to a point where he was like, okay, this is enough. This is not what we're supposed to be doing. So the idea that they would push back, it's not. This isn't novel, right? It's happened many, many times, and you would expect that from your commanders, especially given the close relationship they had with the generals. They were very well respected in the Republic. Again, for him, he still feels like this should all be part of, right. Nothing's changed, so this is how I should be operating. It should be operating this way. Of course, that's not the case, right? The empires are they're evil, and that guy was particularly evil. I mean, we talked
Right.
about him wanting to go, hang the body up in the city to kind of send a message. So I think it was a very big shock, and it kind of leads into this next question of, how much was the action of AWOL attributed to the chip going bad, or having, not being as effective, versus the actions that had happened, or was it some combination thereof?
I think it's probably a combination, because we know the chip was active and it was very effective for Cody. So I think something there has to have changed, or, you know, the effectiveness is wearing down, or whatever that might be. Something is different than it was what we saw on screen on Revenge of the Sith with Obi-Wan. I'd like to think that, I think even as a soldier, even with the chip, you have achieved victory. Your governor, your commanding officer, I guess if you want to call it that, is giving you an order to do something that is outside of the rules of combat. If you look at the rules of combat about how they do it, someone surrenders, or you have a parlay, it's it's not proper at the very least to betray them and just gun them down and do that. That's what the separatists were doing, right? And so it's this idea of where he came from, what he was fighting for, those ideals, those morals, And so by going AWOL, it's him up. He's almost doing it because he's upholding the values of the Republic.
Yeah.
And I think he's able to he's finally been able to differentiate. And we got the hint throughout the episode, of course, that he was already getting to this point of what is this empire? Like we fought for all of these things. We were on the right side. We're the good guys. But now it feels like the things that we're being asked to do and the things that we're doing and the people that we're hurting, that's not what we fought for. That's not what we fought for.
Right. We're doing what the other guys were doing.
Exactly. And so, but the without the effectiveness of the chip in order to reaffirm what they want him to do and force him to doing and force him into being compliant, I guess maybe is the word I'm looking for. You have more freedom of thought. You have more freedom of action, maybe not of thought, but you have more freedom of action. You don't have the thing in your head, forcing you to go one direction, even though you really want to tug a little further right, or you really want to make a different decision, but you're not allowed to because you just, for whatever reason, you don't know why. And this is the torture part of the chips, right?
Right.
I think these guys know they want to make a different decision. They don't like the decision where they're making, but they don't have a choice but to pull the trigger because that's what they're wired to do.
Yeah.
But so it's a mix, though. I mean, you got to have that mix in there. He knows right and wrong. He knows he has his own moral ideals right now, but then also he doesn't have that governor in his head. I mean, so to speak, not the governor person, but like the throttle forcing him to make a decision he doesn't want to make.
So I'm going to jump ahead just real quick because I think it's probably important that we answer this question, just get it out of the way. But I saw over the weekend, there were a couple, there was an article, I forgot who did it. There was a video that I watched and then turned off very quickly because I was like, I don't believe that at all. But I just want to get your thoughts on this idea that maybe that Rampart actually did kill Cody and that he used that. He told Crosshair that he went AWOL because he's trying to indict Crosshair for all these different clones disappearing and going AWOL. I don't really buy that. I don't to me, what is it? That would be terrible writing, honestly. Like you have a character like Commander Cody that's beloved for all the reasons we've already talked about. You bring him back. There's a big celebration, and then you just unceremoniously just kill him off. I mean, that just seems like really lazy.
Too.
What's that?
Off screen too, right?
Right, exactly. Off screen. Like it just, I don't understand these conspiracy theorists that are behind this.
Yeah, it sounds like clickbait to me.
It's probably clickbait, right? It got me, so I was like, what?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense, right? And again, so if Rampart did kill him, he would do it to make an example out of him, right? So you would know that he would put that in front of the clones. He would bring that to Tarkin and the Emperors. Like, hey, we had another one. This is going on. Right. I've taken care of it, but here's what I'm doing about it also here. But yeah, for him to lie to Crosshair, I mean, I wouldn't put it past Rampart, I guess. Rampart's capable of all those things. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
so I get that aspect of it. But I'm with you. To do it all off screen and just say that's the end of Cody unceremoniously after spending a whole episode, a really good episode with him, would just be, I mean, you would piss some people off if that was really the case. So I don't put any stock in that one at all.
The potential that you would have with a character like that out in the free roaming wild against the Empire, very similar to Rex and Clone Force 99 and all the other ones. Why would you bury that? It just doesn't make any sense. All right, so let's get
exactly. I mean, the better question of all of that, is that does Cody feel like he's energized to rebel against the Empire, or is it no? He just wants to get out like Cut. I mean, that's the real question, right? That's the more interesting conversation. That's the more interesting story to tell. From a story writer's perspective.
Yeah.
We killed him off screen just to see how Crosshair would react.
Right.
No, that's not. I mean, it's a tool. You could do it. But this group doesn't seem to be, that's not their MO.
And what he's doing and where he's going is something we're going to talk about. But before we do, I just have a quick question. So now that we've kind of ruled that out, that he's dead, he is in fact alive. And I haven't put a lot of thought into this, but there was obviously a breaking point, some combination of the chip and the actions and what he saw. I think. Oh, so I did want to. Sorry, let me just backtrack 1 second. The other thing that stuck out to me, and I don't know if we talked about this on the breakdown, but it came up. I watched the episode Friday morning, Friday afternoon, doesn't matter. But something stood out to me that I didn't catch. But we got the aftermath of all that. So all that was horrible stuff, right? They killed Tawny, put her body up there, and what I didn't catch personally was the fact that all the clone troopers were leaving, and all the galactic, scripted whatever soldiers were coming in at that point, right? They were they were switching of the guard.
Mm.
And I thought, you know what? That's kind of sick. Like, if they're using the clones to go in and do these like hard battle type operatives, and then once all that's done, right, they're just fodder is really what they are. They don't like them. They really don't want them. But you know what? If it's going to be a Mission Impossible, or if there's even a slight chance, they're doing what Pong Krell is doing, right? Just send in the clones. Let them, and if they die, they die. Whatever. And then once they're done, get them out of there. Let's put our own people in there, so we don't have to worry about them, bucking the system, or the chips faltering or whatever. Get the people in there that we're paying really well to fight for the Galactic Empire and stand there, and who believe in our values, or whatever, uphold the law as we see it. That would be kind of sick if that's really what they were doing, is just keep sending in clones on these missions like that and slowly killing them off through attrition.
I think some of it makes sense, though, because they're also your highly skilled. They're the ones who have actually been battle tested.
Very true. Yeah, good point.
And so they're the ones that they are the experts. They know how to go do this, and they're very effective. And they've been doing it for a really long time. Do we have confirmation, though, that the troopers coming in weren't clones? I didn't necessarily get that impression that they were all conscripted troopers.
It was the helmets.
Right.
They were coming in with different style, like the different style helmet coming in. And that's how I assumed that was them coming in.
And none of the clones are wearing those helmets at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if that's what they're supposed to represent, then yeah. I mean, I think that would be something. But then also, if I'm a clone trooper, I would be like, these are the Imperial Guards, right? These are just the sentries. They don't actually do anything.
The peacekeepers, right? They just
the peacekeepers, yeah, and not to belittle any of those types of things, but from this respect, I mean, these are the non-skilled combatants coming in. They just go in there and beat people and scare them into submission. Yeah, but you bring in the special forces, and that's what the clones have kind of become within the Imperial Army, I guess.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could view it a few different ways, though. I see where you're coming from. I think practically, they're still your best fighting force.
So, this is before we get into where he's going. Last thing, promise. So after he leaves, assuming he left and didn't agree with all of this. How much do you think he thinks back now on Order 66 and attacking Kenobi? And this is, I want to go to a question that Mike threw up earlier. I know he's not with us on now, but he said, I hope we see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Cody meet up again. Not likely, but it would be nice. But do you feel like there's a part of him that would want to kind of go through that reconciliation with Obi-Wan Kenobi, or just try to find him to say, look, man, I'm really sorry about that. That was not me.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'd like to just hear his thoughts about it in general, even if it wasn't even if he never met up with Kenobi. I think it would be great to hear. I mean, we've seen the struggle with some of the clones that they turned against, and just they turn against their Jedi generals, and the pain they have reflecting on it, and how they felt like they just totally betrayed them. But again, it wasn't something they wanted to do,
right?
But they did it, and they did it effectively.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be great for Cody to have that moment of reconciliation with Obi-Wan. Again, doesn't seem likely because Obi-Wan's, being a hermit and all of that good stuff. But I think it would be really great to at least have Cody's side of that, and for some of that to come out. I think it would be really fantastic to hear. I have a feeling that Cody thinks a lot about this stuff, especially as things have continued to go downhill. I mean, it's clear that he spent a lot of time thinking about things in general, and has been observing and seeing the shift ever since Order 66 of as the Empire has grown more confident with oppressing, the different regions of the galaxy. I mean, he's seen it change. He's seen the people around him change. And when he sees this governor, you have basically a prisoner of war now, but your governor is being petty and just saying, execute them now, and then, put their body out there. I don't know. It is not surprising he went AWOL after that. He was already on the fence a little bit about it. And then to see that, he's like, that is not why we're here.
Right.
That was never what we were fighting for. And it feels like we have just been duped over and over, at least for the last year. But clearly, and I'm curious how much the clones really know about what has really transpired in this transition of power with Palpatine. I think it would be really interesting to get their perspective on that too, because I think that would really, if they knew that Palpatine was behind a lot of this stuff, or even, partially, and that Dooku and everybody was all kind of on the same side, and they were just orchestrating this thing, and they were all puppets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be. I mean, you talk about mutiny on an untellable scale.
Yeah.
It would just be incredible. So I imagine that's a priority number one. Don't let the clones know anything, because even though some guys like Rampart don't want them to think, they are great thinkers in some ways, right? So, but yeah, I think he hit enough ammunition in that space to make a decision to say, this isn't. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm not killing an unarmed person after they've surrendered and then go making a spectacle of that. That's not what I'm here for.
Yeah, which is, it plays into that line of, what's the difference between us and the
battle
droids,
droids.
right?
Battle droids, we get to make choices, but we have to live with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get both ends of that coin, and are you going to be a slave, a willing slave at this point? If you have the ability to challenge the orders now that you maybe didn't have before, now you are choosing to be a slave if you have an option to do something different. And not all of them are willing to do that. And we've seen that with Hauser as well. I think those are really, really great integration points where we get a few of these characters that have left or challenged or been thrown in prison, whatever might have happened with them. They resurface and maybe get aligned with one another.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great for Cody. I mean, we've talked about, freeing the clones in general, right? And Cody doing that. But, do they have rumors of a guy like Hauser? Have they kept him alive? Again, find it hard to believe they would keep them alive, but which kind of goes back to the other one. Why would you kill Cody if you've kept Hauser alive? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Yeah. I want to come back and revisit that the uprising, because I think that's pretty intriguing. I don't know that it has any bandwidth in this series, so I don't know where they would pick this up if they did something like that. But I do want to come back to that here.
Well, they kind of did it with Hera, like in the Hera Syndulla arc, from the first season, when Hauser does incite others to take, to drop their arms. So, I mean, there's a small precedent at the very least.
Yeah. Well, I meant like showing like a full uprising. I mean, hold on. So I think they could. Well, all right, they could do that. That may become a primary focus for the show if they do that, because I don't think it's a one episode kind of thing.
Oh, totally agree with you there. It would be a true arc at the very least. But it seems like we'd have a lot of more lead up. But this type of episode really does continue to lay the seeds for it, or it continues to sow the seeds that started in season 1 with the Hauser episodes.
With the Hauser episode. That's a good point. Yep. So so Cody's run off. I'd like to think he met up with Rex. What makes it very difficult is, again, in Rebels, like, he doesn't make any mention of Cody, really. There's one scene where he's kind of having like this PTSD flashback kind of thing, and he yells out Cody at the very end, and that was really there's one other reference. Like, I think he was talking about how him and Cody had worked together to, I don't know what it was, find all these different bases or something. I forget now, but that was really it. Like, again, he doesn't really speak about him. So in my head, I don't know that they really got together. And if they did, I think they went down very separate paths. So as much as I would love to see them together, I guess the question is, do you think we would see Rex and Cody together? And then let me put this in your head. There's a line in Rebels when Rex is talking to Kanan, and he tells Kanan they're kind of still trying to reconcile this whole, clones and Jedi, and, Kanan doesn't really trust him at all. And Rex is like, man, I trusted, I fought for my generals, and et cetera, et cetera. It was during that exchange, but at one point, Rex turns to him and says, I didn't betray my Jedi. He says, we all have a choice. And I thought, what'd be really cool is if we did get that scene, and that's something that Cody tells Rex, right, as part of that conversation, is like, look, we all have a choice. And he made that choice. And so, fast forward to Rebels, and we suddenly now have, somebody like Rex echoing Cody's words in that way. That seems very Dave Filoni to do, but Wishful thinking, maybe on my part.
Yeah, and it gets a little messy, I think, with some of that. If you start feeling like you're retconning one of the movies or you're changing the vibe of the movie a little bit too much, maybe. So
Mhm.
that it'd be interesting to see how they would do something like that if they would go back and revisit that. But to kind of go back to your first point though of whether or not they would potentially meet up and team up, it's always a question of like how engaged how many rumors do the clones get when they're still in the army compared to what's going on outside of it? Do they keep track of a Rex? Do they somehow have a way of keeping track of it? And isn't that a risk? If I'm Rex, I mean, you don't know
Exactly.
if you can trust certain people because you've seen what they've done. Presumably, he knows that Cody turned on Obi-Wan. So we know that the chip is effective. Now we know that they're also going to do what they can to help their brothers where they can because they're fighting forces as well. I mean, these are people who can make a difference. So I think it would make sense for them at some point to meet up if that's where Cody's at with his headspace. And we don't know what Cody's interested in. We don't know what drives Cody at this point. Does he just want peace like a cut, or does he want to do something and rebel against this empire, even though he's been upholding their values for so long and may not have this complete differentiation between that and the Republic quite yet.
Mhm.
Or maybe he's finally got there. Maybe this is the thing that he feels compelled to do. I think even if they were to team up, though, I think they're both so capable that having two commanders in the same group doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That they would lead different teams. They
Yeah.
would while they would cross, kind of like what they did during the Clone Wars, right, with Obi-Wan and Anakin. They'd cross paths a lot, maybe, or often, or from time to time, but they would have very different directives, especially now in this time where they are trying to form cells and trying to form some sort of resistance and some sort of organized type of resistance, presumably is what we think Rex is doing, right? But
Right.
what exactly does that look like? And I can't imagine them all being in the same place because that's a risk as well. And again, they're trying to build that, and you need to go pull people from all over the place in order to do that. But so I think even if they were to link up together, I think they would have to break apart and go their own separate ways, so they won't necessarily be hand in hand the entire way.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, the idea of them getting together is not out of the realm of possibility. It's probably going to be a short-lived or a visitation episode, scene, moment, whatever that is.
Right.
I think if the potential for that to be longer and more, yeah, the potential for that to be longer is really going to be predicated on where the direction of this show goes. Like, what are they trying to tell?
Yeah,
What
it's still the
story are they
Bad
trying to
Batch,
tell?
right?
What's that?
It's still the Bad Batch, right?
Yeah, it's still the
not,
Bad Batch.
It's not the Cody and Rex show. Right? I think that's
Yeah.
important to keep in mind, and not to give credibility to the folks who said that this wasn't a Bad Batch episode, because it
Right.
absolutely was with
Yeah.
the Crosshair. But I mean, but again, I think that's why you don't necessarily revisit a whole lot with it. And so when I think about a Cody in the context of the show, it's difficult to see him in more than one or two more episodes, and it's difficult to see him in any real capacity where we see him a lot on screen with a lot of really hard-hitting dialogue and meaningful moments. We might get a couple, but I think within the grand scheme of things, it's a question of, I mean, but there's ways to make it work though, too. I mean, we know that Echo and we know that Omega, it may be Tech at some point, but we know Omega and Echo are definitely people that Cody would benefit from getting to know better. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
and same with Echo and Omega with Rex. Right. So, but I mean, with
Mhm.
Cody's very much on that journey and that change. And someone like Echo, who Cody knows, could be a really big, swing in that, especially if they're trying to get him to join up on a cause. So there are ways for Cody to work into this series, maybe not to be as front and center, but we know Rex isn't going to stick around for more than a couple of episodes either. He didn't really do that in the first season. So I don't think it's a reasonable expectation for him to all of a sudden do that in these episodes too. So if he were in, I mean, we got 16 episodes.
Yeah.
If he were in 2 or 3, that feels like a pretty good number to me. You can do a lot of things in 2 or 3 and get some meaningful dialogue and character development, but beyond that, then you start questioning, it's not really the Bad Batch. It's Bad Batch and Cody or Bad Batch and Rex. Yeah.
Well, I think so. I'm looking at the episodes here, right? When we get to 481, it's the one that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. That's that clone conspiracy, truth and consequences. I think there might be some room in there for them to explore this idea of the clone uprising, or at least start like being the catalyst to really kind of set something in motion. They don't need to focus on it, but I think somebody like the Bad Batch, going back to Echo's right kind of response or his comment about, look, there's a lot of people out there that we should be saving. We had toyed with this idea last season. We were talking about, would they at some point, now that they're not, they're not going to be doing these missions of the day or whatever, if they wanted something different, that their purpose really is to save their brothers, especially now that Camino has been sunk.
Right.
So if that becomes the focus of the Bad Batch, then I think through natural extensions and relationships, I think people like Rex and Cody kind of can get worked into the fold, still be focused on the Bad Batch because they're still doing the primary, the heavy lifting, the big driving of freeing the clones. But somebody like Cody is a very dangerous person to have out there if I'm the Empire. Right. Not only do they know the ins and outs, they're up to date on exactly what's changed and what's different with the Empire versus the Republic. He's probably got levels of clearance. On top of that, we toyed with this idea, so we'd come back to it, this idea of like, how if he was out there trying to get the clones to see and realize that the Empire, it took down their home as much as they hate the Kaminoans, I think that would send a pretty good message to the clones. And I think it would cause a lot of them to, if they're already on the brink of disobeying orders and wanting to rebel because the chips are malfunctioning, that to me would be like, just talk about a hot mess of on Rampart and the Empire's plate of trying to resolve that and work through all that. I can see where all of that could potentially happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out the episode title of Truths and Consequences. It fits really well with that, right? Kind of like Solitary Clone really brought us back to Crosshair, and even to Cody could be applied to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think something like that, and again, does it get leaked out about Camino and what happened? And while the clones may not always have the fondest of memories of Camino, it was about the closest thing they had to a home.
Yep.
Besides a ship and besides just their company. And so I think it's a really important, it could be a really important moment to see what happens, because we know the clones are practically non-existent in the near future. And so I have a feeling we should be able to see in the Bad Batch that de-evolution of the clones, right? I would imagine this series is going to, that's probably one of the deliverables of the series, is that we will see the end of the clones in the army in most capacities, if not all. And so, but how, what is that? And is the rest of the Imperial Army ready for that fight? At this point, it seems like no. But we know they have been training special forces. We know we do have Republic Command, or we have commandos. Mm-hmm. So we know those exist. Mm-hmm. So they are capable soldiers out there of doing it, but do they have the numbers right now? And that part's still really unclear of how many clones are actually still in service right now.
Yeah. So you said something, it's stoked my memory here on for Rex again. It stoked my memory only because I wrote it down. But there's a moment in, again, the episode in season 2 when they meet up with Rex. He says, he's talking to Kanan and Ezra, and he says, didn't you hear? The Emperor said the clone army has outserved its purpose and retired us. And now he said, again, I get it. This was done years ago, and now we're trying to kind of fit all this together. So the context may be a little different here now, but the way he says it, he's almost joking.
Right.
Right. Like it didn't, it's like tongue in cheek. Like I didn't really get the sense like, oh no, they wiped us out. Right. It wasn't like a massacre or anything like that. It's just like they retired us and we just kind of left and went on to do our own things. I don't think that's really the case in terms of what happened here. At least it doesn't look like we're going down that path.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it was very tongue in cheek. I think we know the bill is going to pass at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And likely there's going to be something that gets out that shows that the clones are no longer trustworthy, and the Senate needs to make that choice, and they finally do make that choice.
Right.
But it's also very clear that the Emperor is the one pushing it as well. He keeps putting it out there. Presumably he's the one championing this.
Yeah.
So but again, I think they say we're going to conscript soldiers, we're going to move away from this, but they don't always tell you what you're going to do with what you're leaving behind. And I think that for Rex, I think it was probably very much a kind of, is it genocide? Is that the right term?
I guess it would be. Yeah, in some way, right?
Yeah, I'm not very good at which of the sides are the appropriate ones there, but something like that has to happen. And again, I think that's where you would see, and I think that would be really interesting for the clone Clone Force 99 for also Crosshair to get back involved, and you could bring a Rex and a Cody in and a Hauser. You could have all these other characters, and you really can have a big team up. I think some of it right now, we just don't know what the direction of the Bad Batch series is for season 2. We don't know what the end game is for the series, what direction we want them to go, because it still feels, at least the first couple episodes, still felt like, well, we're just trying to make do. We're just trying to find a way to have a future.
Yeah.
And then we get an episode like this, it like just turns everything on its head. Like, okay, well, no. It has the potential to be a lot more than this. But what is it going to take to do that, and how far are we going to push that? And so I would love for this to be the direction the series takes, though, and that you were able to bring Cody back in and say, hey, and learn from that character. Like, hey, do you still have your chip? Like, how are you making these decisions? We keep hearing more of this, but how is that actually happening in practice? And then how much experience does a Rex have with some of that too, based on what he's out there doing? And I think those all fit within the Bad Batch narrative as well. So you can do that and it not be Cody and Rex centric, but you can still get a lot of moments in that at the same time.
Yeah, it does feel like it's still very early, and we're primarily basing this on one episode, but
we're almost a quarter of the way through the series, man.
But I do feel like this would be a great season. I'd love to see this whole thing kind of play out.
That'd be really cool. Cool season.
I think the Empire, I don't think, again, you made a good point. Like, it really depends on, do they have the forces already, non-clone forces in place to kind of execute everything they want, no pun intended, to kind of execute on the orders and their missions and objectives, right? It's a big galaxy, and there's a lot of planets out there that they're trying to rein in forcefully in many instances. So, but assuming all that aside, it feels like if I'm the Empire, I would accelerate this idea, or accelerate this, get rid of the clones, retiring the clones.
Oh, it's not for lack of effort, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, like, in the other part of me too, I'm thinking about that clone that we saw in the streets in Obi-Wan Kenobi, the bum clone.
Yeah, he always surfaces every time we talk about this. Yeah.
Right. So then now I'm starting to think, okay, so did they really get rid of all the clones, or were some of them okay? Like, maybe that guy's just crazy, and so the Empire just turns a blind eye to it, right? Doesn't really care about him. But clearly they don't think he's a threat, because I think everybody knows he's out there banging that cup all day. So why wouldn't they put him down?
Right.
So maybe it is one of these things where they do it. Maybe it's a combination. Maybe they do mass kill many of the clones, and that becomes the Bad Batch purpose, where they're really just trying to save whoever they can. And maybe the numbers aren't very large. Maybe they don't have a lot that they save. But, it's one of these, every life saved is a brother saved. And so we'll do what we can. That could be interesting. I do wonder too, like, just quickly, and we're pretty much kind of wrapping up here. I do wonder if we do get a Cody or Cody does come back into the fold and he's part of all of this, if he voluntarily says, get this thing out of my head. Like, I'd like to see him get his chip removed as well.
Yeah, I think it would just be a great one to have him in there, have him come in and give more context about what the clones are thinking right now, and then within the context, with the framing of that, of do we need to take this thing out, or do you even feel it anymore? And then what are the risks of it at this point too? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions we could have answered, but then just that that story arc, and that's not even a whole episode necessarily.
Yeah,
it can just be a piece of an episode.
The other kind of theory that I was tossing around is the inverse of Legends, right? And we talked earlier on about, in Legends, he went on to train the stormtroopers. I don't think this is really going to be possible, and if it is, I don't know how they would make this work. But I just thought it would be kind of poetic if he actually went on to train rebels, right? They used his skills and his knowledge, and just, again, the inverse of what happened in Legends. That could be potentially a thing, but I don't know if that plays to his strengths. Like, I want to come, like,
I joked in Discord that the rebel soldier on Endor isn't Rex; it's actually Cody.
There you go.
Mike was not thrilled.
Wasn't happy about that one.
Yeah, he didn't find the humor in that one.
Yeah, I see it. I think it's a good idea. But yeah, we'll see where where this goes. I'd like to see them leverage his skill sets, which again we talked about were negotiation and kind of being the level thinker by the book kind of person. I don't know how that fits into the Bad Batch or if it fits into a budding rebellion, but if he does, it'd be nice to see him do that rather than just make him another Rex that's out there. He's capable of doing that. I'm not saying he's not, but I don't know how you make that exciting. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I think it's okay for it not to be exciting at some point if they become, basically on par with one another, and they that's how they operate, that's how they work, and
Right.
they kind of show up kind of in and out as they need to within the context of the story. I think that's okay to get there, but there's a lot of meaty stuff, before you get to that point. Like, this is the part that's always interesting. It's the moment of conflict and the decision and the resolution of all of that. This is where the interesting part of that story is for Cody. We had it with Rex, and we got to see it front and center, right, with Ahsoka at the end of Clone Wars. So now let's see it with Cody. We've already kind of missed a little bit of it, but that doesn't mean that we still can't get all of the end results of that and his perspective on it and get that shared and be able to tell us. And you can even do flashbacks and stuff like that if you really wanted to. That's not really the show's MO, but I mean, there's ways you can tell this. I think people would absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And that it was coming from Cody, I think, is just that much more powerful, right? I mean, again, we got it from Rex, which is another character that has to be able to tell that story. But I think Cody is another one that we could really flesh this character out in ways that we never thought possible, given without it being, in the movies, just how little we got.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an opportunity that you finally have that you can really get some great meat on that character and, I don't know, find a little bit of resolution, I think, with the importance of the character as well. At least have understanding about the importance of the character and whether or not there is anything important about Cody.
Yeah. So on that note, and this is kind of really the final question, but on that note, again, assuming that let's just, in this imaginative world here of where we think the series would go, let's say they went down the path of this liberation of the clones and the uprising of the clones, and Cody becomes centric to this whole part, right? He becomes a very pivotal character in that, and we go 16 episodes and maybe half of those are focused around that. Do you feel like that's enough? How would you feel if he died? Let me just pull the Band-Aid off. How would you feel if this was his last mission, and that would explain why Rex has really he's not really talking about him later on, because this is so early on, and depending on how this kind of plays out, maybe there really wasn't a lot of time for them to reconnect and for him to learn about it. Maybe it was just really all mission based, and they were out there saving lives and that kind of thing. But I don't know. Would you feel that was the case? If not, because then if you don't, right? To me, it feels like he does die pretty early on. Like, other than that, or he's out again, like we said, doing something completely different and serving the rebellion or other groups. I don't know what that would be, and it's just that story is yet to be told, and maybe never will be told. I'd like to see him go down a blaze of glory, I guess, but I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah, I think with the clones, I think I've come to I've had to get comfortable that many of them are going to die. I mean, and
Yeah.
potentially named ones that we know, not just kind of throwaway characters like we got in episode 3 of what was it, Wyler and Nova. Like, so I mean,
Yeah.
characters you just
Ooh.
get introduced to,
Right.
and then they're off, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, characters like maybe a member of the Bad Batch, or maybe a Cody. I mean, not Rex clearly, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have stakes. I mean, you have to have a character that you love, and that losing something that means something to you helps make that story more powerful. But I think it really has to be meaningful in that way, not just to kill characters off because they're a recognizable character and we don't see them later on in canon.
Right.
We found all sorts of ways around that, of course, but I think it would be great to see him, put his life out on the line for something that he truly believed in and had the choice to do so, and was brave enough to make the choice to do so against his programming. And I think with the clones in general, I think that's what we want to see, right? We want to see them not be puppets, make a choice, even if it means laying their lives down, because they've been laying their life on the line for, years and years already, for a sham. And so to be able to do something and be able to answer the questions of be able to have a real life, or a real opportunity of saying, what does my life look like after war? And for them to make the choice to try to pursue that, I think is really powerful and really something interesting. And characters like Cody and Hauser and Rex really help personify all of that, because they're the ones that we've spent time with. We understand who they are. We understand the challenges they've had, some of the things that they've done. And to see them make that choice and get some sort of comfort or satisfaction, even if it meant dying as a result, I think would just be really good story. It just feels really powerful to me. I think those would just be really great. That would just be great TV. Sad, but really great TV. And I think this team, I think, could do it in a way that really feels like it was, they went out with their blaze of glory. They went out with, pride and the way that you would want a character to meet their end.
Yeah, and I think what I would say you could be honoring the characters
Absolutely,
by
yeah.
doing something like that, given the history and how much we again all love these characters now after so many years. So
Well, and you're giving them a bit of the redemption too, right?
yeah,
You're
exactly.
saying, look, they're not puppets. They've done a lot of things that maybe they wish they couldn't do, like just like with the
Hmm.
Pongruel arc. But you're giving them the opportunity to go and make a choice and do something different, and that they have a choice is so powerful just in and of itself, that clones feel like they can make the decision that's best for them individually. I mean, for their brothers as well, but they can actually make a choice individually, like a Cut has or like a Rex has.
Hmm.
And so many of them have not had that opportunity.
Yeah,
And so many more that may have had the opportunity, or maybe fewer, but so many that have had the opportunity and they didn't take it because they didn't feel like they could, or some of them just they just didn't know what to do, so they just went back with what they knew.
yeah. It's almost like they were they were human in all the ways, with the exception of one of the most important ways, which is free will.
Right.
Right, and giving them that opportunity to finally exercise free will would be what I think all of them would want, right? They were human in every way, but that, and so that for me, as long as they got that, whatever else happened, hopefully, I think they would it would be awesome to see them kind of go down like that,
Well,
and
and
be honored
Crosshair
in that
says it
way.
too, right? We're soldiers. We do what needs to be done.
Yeah,
Okay, well, what if I'm not a soldier? Then what?
yeah, right.
I mean, it's just,
Yeah, it's like Rex
it's
said,
cool. Yeah.
we all have a choice.
Yep.
Well, I mean, again, for a character that really hasn't been on screen much, I know we've turned it into an hour and 16-minute show, but I'm excited. Who knows? We don't know if we're going to get him again in a series. Maybe they do this somewhere else, comic book books. Maybe it's a totally different series. I don't know. I think for Dave Filoni, this is a character that he wants to keep alive, and I'm glad we got this, honestly, because I really had some. It was really really difficult for me to reconcile what he did so quickly in Revenge of the Sith, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it makes sense now. And the fact that he's out there and he is basically, in my opinion, a good guy once again, bodes well for his storyline. So I'd love to see where he continues to go and how he plays into the larger narrative.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that's maybe a negative is that we haven't picked up Hauser at all. And that was a character that had a similar arc, and that was just left. And we
Because
don't
they
know
did
where that went.
position him. I know you've been bringing him up a lot, but you're
Yeah.
right. They did
I mean, it's
position
very
him as
similar.
being, one of the first to go, yeah, I'm not doing this.
Right.
So it's important.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I like that we're seeing a trend developing. We're seeing a
Right.
pattern developing, and then you bring in a character like Cody, who we know has executed the order and
Yeah.
followed orders, right? But again, it seems like, okay, we are seeing it, but now we need to do something with it, because now this is the second character we've had, and one's been taken away, and this one's left. So it's time we actually deliver on this story and this idea, and we push it forward and we do something with it.
Yeah.
And so I'm beginning to feel like, though, this is. I think you kudos to you. I think you had speculated on this of freeing the clones. It's definitely feeling like each episode we get like this has a lot more credibility behind that potentially being the story arc of the Bad Batch season 2.
Yeah.
Even though maybe not their specific directive, but it's working into that overall arc within the context of Crosshair, and that's kind of the way that this all is going to fit and work and still feel like Bad Batch.
Yeah. Yeah. It gives them new purpose and meaning.
Yeah. And it gives Crosshair a huge opportunity to really work through a lot of his conflict, and us to be able, hopefully him actually be able to tell us what the hell he's thinking rather than just chewing on his toothpick and
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll end the episode there. Definitely appreciate everybody that came out for this live recording, this Patreon recording. You guys were awesome as always.
Yep. And a quick shout out again to everybody that was in the chat. Music Train, Jonathan, Sky, Lauren, Steph, Mike, and Wookie Talks came in there with a couple of comments there at the end. So thank you so much for coming out to the live stream. If you are curious about checking out the live stream and you're just listening to this, cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can go and hit the subscribe and hit the little notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we go online. Of course, you can find all this stuff on cantinacast.com. One other thing we didn't mention is that we actually released a new Jedi Tutorials by one of our Discord members, and it's about the animated series and kind of the importance, for him. And so Obi Ben in Discord or Ben Stone released that just the other day. So invite you to go to the website cantinacast.com/Jedi Tutorials, and you will find that article there. It's a quick read. But it's a good one. So if you want to go check that out, please do. And remember to hit the like and leave him some comments. We'll make sure those get over to him.
Yep. Thanks for submitting that too, Ben. That was
Thanks, Ben. That's awesome.
Very pleasant. He's got a cute dog, man. You got to see the picture. Like, I want that. I want a dog like that.
Come for the dog, stay for the story.
Come for the dog, stay for the Jeditorial.
That's right.
But okay, so we've got another episode coming. We'll do the breakdown of episode 4, which is called Faster. And I think we had speculated this is likely going to be the what we saw in the trailer, where Tech is in some kind of a race, pod race kind of 2.0 type thing. So it may be just kind of another side mission of sorts, but hopefully it's got some meat behind it and kind of feeds into the larger narrative for this season. But we'll see. To be determined.
Yep, hope so.
But yeah, until then, again, thanks. Any final words before we get out of here?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. We'll see you guys in, 4 or 5 days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.